Let me preface all of this by saying there's no way to talk about this Manson stuff without sounding crazy.
2 years ago, the hippie commune led by Charles Manson moved it into this old Wild West film set just outside Los Angeles. And it was here that they were living on the night the alleged murders took place.
Been here since the pyramids have been here, since David and the giant, since the whole thing's always been here.
I can't believe in all my time living in LA, I haven't been to Spahn Ranch.
I'm surprised by that, especially with all the Manson craze of 2019.
Right.
The reboot, Quentin Tarantino's Manson reboot. So behind me are what are known as the Life magazine caves. There are these famous photos from the spread in Life magazine of the Charlie already been arrested, but the girls, the followers hanging out here, they're all posed underneath that cave. They didn't actually hang out at this cave. They did hang out down in this ravine because it's cooler down here. You know, it's hot out here in the valley. But all of the Western buildings and movie sets and stuff were further up on top of that when those were all gone.
This cave is not what I was expecting, to be honest.
There's another cave down there which is on private property. So part of this is private, owns to the church, owned by the church. They patrol it. They move around. But what they call the baby caves are over there. That's where I think Pooh Bear was born, Charlie's son, his official son. Can you go on that little sandbar there?
Yeah, do you think I'll sink?
No. There's quicksand here. It's that creepy.
It's that creepy.
It's actually a lovely photo. And you'd never know 11 murders were plotted here.
Yeah. I don't know what I was expecting. It looks bigger in the photos.
You could fit 9 crazed followers.
Cult members. Funny that this land is now owned by a church.
I'm in the world all by myself.
Yeah, on this one you are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So according to legend, to lore passed down by Manson's modern day followers, yes, they still exist, this is the rock where he sat and played guitar for Terry Melcher, the producer of The Birds, son of Doris Day. And Terry Melcher said, hey, your stuff's good, but I can't do anything with it, you're too old. And according to Vincent Bugliosi, where he comes up with this revenge plan to kill Terry Melcher because he snubbed him because he wouldn't produce his music. It's very convoluted if you really get into the details of what the prosecution was alleging to have happened. And it looks like they've got some little ceremonial area set up here. And then you can see here, there's been cuts taken out of the rock. It's a common thing for the modern day followers will come here and they'll cut a little keepsake.
Let me go back and play, let me go back and play.
I have esoteric knowledge over a wide variety of subjects, and this is sort of what I believe based on kind of checking all these other sources and stuff like that. But this is Spahn Ranch. So for decades, this was an active movie ranch. They had these all over LA and they filmed Westerns here. They had freestanding Western sets, a saloon, a log cabin, what have you. And the cowboy actors would come and they would film here. And they had a number in this area. Just across the street was the Iverson Movie Ranch. And then a little further down the road, you have Corriganville, Crash Corrigan's Movie Ranch. This is what remains of Corriganville. Crash Corrigan was a movie cowboy. Bought a bunch of land, made film sets to film other Western films. You forget now, they do like 1 or 2 Westerns a year. Back in the day, especially like the silent era, tons of Westerns, probably one or 2 released every single week. They're all pretty much the same, but if you watch some of those old like Tom Mix movies and stuff like that, you can see some of the rock formations and match it up. These foundations here are from where the buildings used to be. Tom Mix has an interesting death story, but it's in Arizona where he died. Old movie cowboy.
How did he die?
There. He was driving in Arizona and car drove into a ditch or something, and his suitcase was stored behind him, and it came down and decapitated him.
Decapitated!
Did what's it called? An internal decapitation, maybe?
Internal? What does that mean?
An internal, when the skin is still attached, but everything inside's become detached.
I had not heard of that. That's horrible.
Yeah, an internal decapitation.
For more than 20 years, Tom Mix, seen here with Tony, his wonder horse, brought entertainment and inspiration to young America. Few screen stars have achieved popularity so great. Few men in any walk of life have been more universally mourned than he when death closed his career.
Here's a
Okay.
plaque.
Silvertown.
There you have it. This is nice. I'm your host, Ray Crash Corrigan. Welcome to Corriganville. Where you now stand was one of sprawling Western-themed amusement parks. Sounds like Hauser. Also acts as a backdrop of many of the favorite movies and TV shows of yesteryear. While to this day it is still used for filming, it now serves mainly.
Tonto, the daring and resourceful masked rider of the plains, led the fight for law and order in the early West. Return with us now to those thrilling days of yesteryear. The Lone Ranger rides again.
This town site at Corriganville had many names in Hollywood, including Dodge City, Mineral City, Tombstone, and Lone Ranger Ranch.
And I think this is where Once Upon a Time in Hollywood filmed the Spahn Ranch stuff, too.
Ladies.
Spahn Ranch stayed in the Spahn family after George Spahn died. There was later another death here. A bridge washed. There was a fire. There was a bridge washed out or something. Somebody was trying to come here, but it was private property. There was a fire here that burned down all the Western buildings. So, you know, if you want to do any investigations on all this stuff, fire it all burned down. And now it's a state park, which I think is very interesting. That the government. I think it's interesting that the ranch could have been in government hands in the 1960s, which is why the family was put here to keep an eye on them. And now it's still in government hands. It's a state park and can't do any excavation. You can't do any looking around because there's no development or anything because it's a park and you got to keep it pristine and for nature and all that stuff. The Manson family wound up here in the 60s. They were hanging out. And this is where I start to sound crazy.
You're a bit late for that!
I think probably what happened is somebody knew, the cops, the CIA, somebody knew that these murders were going to go down. And they couldn't interfere because that would compromise ongoing investigations that they had. So they were sort of left to happen. All this fallout happens and then they have to cover it up. And that's why it all seems like bullshit. That's why you read about the story and you go, seems like there's something more going on. Because there was. In the 1960s, the US government had over 250 assets within the entertainment industry. This is the CIA, FBI, this is COINTEL, this is like confirmed stuff pretty much. They had people, Life magazine was a very frequently used cover if they needed if they needed an agent in like an exotic location. Well, he's a reporter. He's just doing a story on, you know, the tribes of South America. And then there's like a revolution there that topples the leftist government, you know, a little while later. So it's, if they were doing it in other countries, there's no reason to believe they weren't also doing it here in America.
Guilty of any murders? Are you guilty of plotting any murders?
I killed a chicken once.
I think Charles Manson was some sort of informant, possibly some sort of experiment, but he definitely had this ability that cult leaders have to persuade people, to brainwash people, if you will, to make people do things that seemingly defied logic. And that would be a very attractive weapon to a government, right? If you could just make a killing machine and then it could just be turned off, you know what I mean? They'd have no knowledge of what they did. The Manson family had something to do with intelligence. A handler, possibly acting from 3 or 4 positions away, said, hey, you should go up to this Spahn Ranch place. It's isolated, it's out at the corner of the city of LA. You can put somebody up there, you can see, because there's no highway, you can see anybody coming for miles or whatever. And they put them here basically to keep an eye on them. Because Charles Manson, because of his talents as a sex trafficker and a BS artist, had all of these connections to the music business and all of these, Jim Morrison, the Byrds, all of these people who, you know, had the ear of the youth of America. And it would be a good a good position to be in if you wanted to squash opposition to the war, to be able to sort of influence these celebrities who had influence on the youth of the 1960s. So that's why I think they ended up here.
This is where they lived, among the stables, barns, and phony buildings of an old rundown movie location 20 miles from Los Angeles. They called themselves the Family. They came and went, and the number varied from 20 to 30. Police said they were a pseudo-religious cult. People who worked on the ranch said they were heavy users of drugs.
In the spring of '68, Manson conned the blind 80-year-old George Spahn and settled his family at the Spahn Movie Ranch, once owned by silent screen star William S. Hart. They lived in the ramshackled, broken-down movie sets, panhandled, hustled, stole, shoveled manure, and ate garbage. But the obvious discomforts of life with Charlie were far more desirable to these runaways than their parents' comfortable homes.
Charles Manson was in institutions his entire life, basically. It's very possible he could have come to the attention of somebody like a Dr. Jolly West, who was in San Francisco at the same time as Charles Manson. He gets out of jail and heads up to the Haight-Ashbury, where he heard it's really happening. He heard this from his cellmate at Terminal Island, a guy named Phil Coffin, who later went on to a pretty successful career in the music industry as a manager. He's the person who stole Graham Parsons' body and took it out to Joshua Tree and burned it in the desert.
In the early days of the Cold War, the CIA ordered the creation of a secret program intended to find ways of mind control. They funded an army of psychiatric institutions across the United States and Canada to perform experiments on unsuspecting patients using psychedelic drugs, sensory deprivation, electroshock treatment, and more. The program was known by its codename, MK Ultra.
Guy Jolly West.
Jolly.
And he would do things like to see if men were more likely to divulge sensitive information after sex. He'd have pay prostitutes to like sleep with men, then ask them questions, and they'd be in a room with a two-way mirror, and he'd be on the other side drinking martinis, like, watching this. Yeah, this guy was a freak. He ran the Haight-Ashbury Free Clinic, which was a front to get access into the hippie community, a CIA front. He ran the Free Clinic.
Hippies are very interesting to the young. Their very name suggests that they are hip, on to something good. It is hard to figure out what positive things they are in favor of. Their diversions might seem to be harmless enough were it not for one thing. In a very aggressive and evangelical way, they praise the effect on the mind of hallucinatory drugs, particularly the drug LSD. The drug is what holds their subculture together, and the drug is extremely dangerous. It is the temptation and the danger that we propose to examine.
The Manson family was in the Free Clinic all the time, getting treated for venereal diseases and stuff like that. So there's no evidence that he directly treated or interacted with Charles Manson, but they were in the same place for like a year solid.
Interesting, okay.
So it could have been as simple as like, you know, oh, this one hippie, he's older than the other ones. He seems to...
And everyone's drawn to him.
Yes. Could LSD be a part of it? We've supplied LSD with, because that's the other thing, they're using LSD. They're wondering if it could be used for mind control.
You see, that's always been my question about how much, you know, who supplied the Manson family with their LSD?
Well, that's a good point. Well, the Hells Angels and, you know, like gangs and stuff. That's usually.
But then you could also believe that somebody in the Hells Angels was connected to the government, was an informant.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
During the course of filming this investigation into LSD, I took my own acid trip. It was important to do that, important to get a fuller, more meaningful understanding of the acid experience.
Yeah, there's definitely like drug stuff going on with all of this too. And a lot of these modern day Manson followers are like, you know, recovering drug addicts, current drug addicts, people who have spent time in jail for drugs, and they all go, this all sounds like drug stuff to me. This sounds like somebody got ripped off and they were teaching them a lesson, and the whole, the chips, all the chips fall.
Are you so afraid? Are you so afraid of that's got your mind locked up?
No, I don't understand.
Go over to the morgue and look at all them dead people.
Just explain to me, though. I'm not dumb. Explain to me simply why that house that night. Why they
Which
went
house?
there.
Which night?
The house on Cello Drive, the Tate house. Why did they go there that night?
Because Tex had been there before, and he went to a familiar place.
And why did they kill people that night? What did they think they were doing for you?
They freaked out, man. Tex was stoned. He got, everybody was loaded, man.
He said he wasn't. He said he was coming off an LSD trip. He had a little speed.
A little speed. Well, not around me, he didn't have no speed, because I wouldn't allow no speed on that ranch. I kick ass over there.
One time when I came here, Vice News hit me up because they heard about my tours and stuff like that. And the reporter said he talked to some of the other Manson people and they were all too crazy. I seemed kind of the most reasonable. So he had me meet him down here with a guy who thought he might be Charles Manson's illegitimate son. Couldn't prove it, but you look at this guy, his long hair and stuff, this had shaped his whole life. If he wasn't biologically, this had gotten into him somewhere, and this was, he was exploring it. So I took him around here. He himself was like a aspiring musician, and he sat right here on this rock and he played this weird song, and the wind was blowing and stuff. It's definitely creepy here. There's a kind of modern era Charles Manson album recorded from prison, where the album cover is the shot of these trees right here. At what? Air, animal, trees, air, water. That's his his dogma that he preached. Gotta be in harmony with the earth, man. I'm nobody, man.
I'm nobody. I'm a tramp, a bum, a hobo. I'm a boxcar and a jug of wine. And a straight racer if you get too close to me.
I'm a big fan of the 1960s. It's one of my special interests. Not just the music, but just the Vietnam era and the politics, the civil rights movement, everything. It was just a very interesting decade.
No one's fun anymore. Whatever happened to fun?
I kind of became interested in the Manson story through that. And then a colleague of mine who worked at the Museum of Death tipped me off that there was a group of modern day followers headed up by a guy named Stoner Van Houten, not his real name, but he would do tours here, and he tracks down the family members. He goes up to Sacramento to visit Squeaky, he does all this stuff.
Hey everyone, Stoner Van Houten here. It's July 9th, 2023, and I can't believe I'm actually making this video. This is actually a miracle. This video is about Leslie Van Houten going free, and I couldn't be happier. This is just absolutely amazing.
He has positioned himself as an expert. Now you talk to Grey Wolf or Michael Channel, some of the other higher up followers, they'll tell you different stuff. But there is a community of people who hang out here and are into the Manson family and still follow Charlie. So I took a couple tours here with these followers, and they took me all around, told me this stuff, and even though they seem a little delusional, they also kind of seem what they know what they're talking about, kind of thing.
So they've kind of shaped your theories on...
They will say it's a drug thing. They don't get into the government thing. That came from, there's two books I'd recommend on that. One's called Weird Scenes Inside the Canyon. It's about the Laurel Canyon music scene and how it was potentially infiltrated by the government in order to sway public opinion about different political issues. And another one called Chaos, which is about Charles Manson's connection to the CIA. They're both fascinating books. They make a lot of assertions that don't really go anywhere. That's the problem, is none of it leads anywhere definitively. But then also it's like, well, yeah, it does lead somewhere. Look at the world we live in. Look at the corporations that run everything. Look at how wealth inequality has increased since the 60s and since Reagan and all this stuff. So the pudding is there. The proof, the recipe is up for debate. I think you would be willingly ignorant to not acknowledge that there's some other stuff going on.
And you were telling me earlier how much you admire and respect Charles Manson?
I was not saying I admire and respect Charles Manson. He's a terrible guy.
So this is where he sat.
According to legend.
According to legend.
This is where he played Look at Your Game Girl for Terry Melcher, son of Doris Day. and producer of The Birds, who had incredible promotion of their single Mr. Tambourine Man,
right?
Produced by Terry Melcher.
Now, Terry Melcher, is that who they thought was living at the Tate residence?
Okay, so this is like where, if you really think about this plan, is so crazy. So Terry Melcher lived at the house on Cielo before the Polanskis did.
Yeah.
So Dennis Wilson and Terry Melcher were really tight, and they would go and they'd cruise for girls and stuff like that. If Manson has Wilson's ear, then the government or whoever's watching Manson now has a window into this lucrative, influential music scene in LA. And they can, keep tabs on the Wilsons and Terry Melcher and all that stuff. But the family had, this wasn't just like a random thing where they're like, oh, let's go kill who's ever in the house now so that Terry Melcher will get scared and realize that it's connected to me not getting a record deal 3 months ago. It's like, how would he have known all of this stuff unless he knew more than he was saying, and Bugliosi or somebody else got to him first and was like, hey, this is the official story, this is what you're gonna say.
I go to the desert. I'm not even allowed to live in your desert.
Now that he was found guilty, how do you feel about Charlie?
All the love I have.
So crazy. Well, thank you for taking me out here. I've never been here before, and I don't know why, but this is super cool. Too bad the buildings aren't still around.
Yeah, so up there, if you want to go, is where like the building, nothing's there anymore. That's where the buildings were and stuff like that. Like the Hells Angels would hang out, and if anybody was coming or another gang or whatever, this is a great spot to hide. Right. You have a vantage point, you only rode into town.
Right.
It is so creepy here though. There's definitely like a energy.
Get out of here. Get out of here. Where would I go? Let's see.
What would you do if you got out of here?
Got out of here.
What if they said to you tomorrow morning, Charles, hey, listen, you're free. You can go wherever you want to go. Do whatever you want to do. What would you do?
I'd probably go out in front on the grass and sit down.
So this expanse here, this is where the movie ranch actually was, all the sets and stuff like that. They would sleep in there sometimes. The soundtrack to that Manson documentary with that cool music was recorded up here. But this is kind of the visible area. But you saw where we just were, down where the caves are. A lot more secretive, a lot more hidden. So this would have just been the perfect place to hide out or stash people where you didn't want anybody looking into what was going on.
In the pre-dawn hours of August 11th, 1969, following 2 nights of murder, Charles Manson was under police surveillance at the Spahn Movie Ranch, nestled in the hidden hills above the Santa Susana Pass. A wealthy car dealer had complained, and the police acted promptly. On August the 16th, over 100 deputies in full combat gear and under air cover raided Manson's compound, charging the Tate LaBianca killers with auto theft.
I'm hungry now.
All right, Lunchbox?
Yeah. And Manson used to eat at Lunchbox?
That's the legend. He would eat hot dogs there and wait. So there's a strip club across the street. I think it's still there. Wait for the girls to get off work. And then, just like...
coax him into his...
Yeah, hey, you want to come? Hey, yeah.
Do you, don't you want me to make you? It's coming down fast, but don't let it break you. Tell me the answer. You may be a lover, but you ain't no dancer. Look out, helter skelter. Helter skelter.